Hi, everyone. Welcome to Art School Live. Eric is traveling for the next couple of weeks, so I am hosting this week and again in 2 weeks from now. So I'm very excited to be here. For those of you that don't know me, I'm 𝘃𝗃𝗍𝗏. I've been with Streamline Publishing for over 12 years. I am the marketing project manager. I also manage the Plein Air Salon art competition. And most recently, I have become the community ambassador for Pastel Today, our newsletter dedicated to all things pastel, because pastel is awesome and I love it. So be sure to check that out at pasteltoday.com/ASL. And with us today is Eve Miller. She is a pastel artist I have been following for a few years. Well, maybe not a few years, but her work is so amazing. I love the colors, the texture, the atmosphere that she creates, and I am super excited for her to be with us today. So let's welcome Eve. Hi, Eve. How are you doing?
Good morning, Carrie. Fine, thank you. All good.
Good. And what are you going to be sharing with us today?
Today, one of my signature workshops is T is for texture, and trying to make it into a shorter demo, I'm going to talk about adding texture to an underpainting. So I kind of baked a cake. I already prepared, I made 3 boards instead of 1. What it'll end up with, and I'm going to move this a little closer so that you can see this better. I hope that's clear.
Yeah, that's good.
What I keep on my board, let me back it up a little bit. What I keep on my board is a color wheel, my reference photo, a black and white reference photo. Not huge. Some people like them very big. I like them the smaller, the better, the less details.
Hmm.
A value finder to check my values, because once you get your darks in, you want to hold on to the darks, and it's good to make sure that you always have light, medium, and dark. I keep the elements of design and the principles near me that I look at for the same way that I have signs all over the studio that say squint, and I still forget to squint. Um, it's just, there's so many things to put together and assimilate. I usually start with a quote. So today I made a short quote. It says, "To me, beauty appears when one feels deeply, and art is an act of total attention." And that was written by Dorothea Lange. The point being that what hooks me in is the one moment when it's I'm on Zoom, I'm zoned out. I don't know how that happens, but it's magical and it's very addictive to me. So I also have here an intention, and when I post every day for my daily practice, is what I encourage my students to do. And I don't do a daily practice all day. I'm on in the morning. I post what I've done in 30 to 40 minutes. Or if it's a plein air, it's even shorter because it's a smaller work. It would be a color sketch. And um, it's 30 to 40 minutes of practice that the more one does, the easier it becomes. And so it's not a long procedure. I have my reference photo if I'm in the studio, or I have the plein air studio outside. And I tell myself, paint, this is my motto, but I leave it here in case, like squint, I forget. Paint with passion and purpose. And I'm very fortunate to feel that passion. And I do have a purpose daily, which is why I put my intention. And whether it's working with warms and cools, depicting emotion, dealing with dominant colors, I challenge myself. So I set up an intention and I take my reference. And I have to say that the reference I'm using today, one, it's a reference that never is copied. It's interpreted. It's always different. I make it my own. I tell myself, make it my own. If you look on my website, I have the same composition many, many times. Never
Mhm.
looks the same. Um, and is there a question?
Oh, no,
No.
sorry. I'm just,
Okay.
yeah, just
No,
agreeing
no,
with you.
no, please. I'm more than happy to answer. And so what I do is create, when I say my daily practice, it's not always this composition on a daily basis, but when I use this, I know it so well. And I encourage people to really know and think. Most of my painting goes on in my head. Not that I always picture it. I try to do a memory painting, which is a whole other subject. But for today, what I've done is this is where I'm eventually going to add. I've added texture. I'm going to add my process and I'll go through the steps because what I teach are 10 steps to a successful painting. Will it get in a show? That's another story. Is it going to get an award? That's a whole concept that is not for today. The point is that it reads that the earth and sky relate, that for me as a landscape painter, there is depth, that as we recede, it gets grayer, less detailed, fuzzier, that we know to put some red violet at the horizon if you're showing a horizon because there's a dirty horizon. And all of these components together worked in steps from the reference photo, picking out a good contrast, which is what this particular reference has always been for me. I mean, it's not a very complicated reference. I mean, there are people who can do lace, and I'm intrigued. But for a landscape, this is 3 to 5 basic shapes, and that's what I always do, 3 to 5 basic shapes. Um, and I do pick my colors intuitively. I will set them out in a paper plate and say, well, I'm going to start with, let's say, if this has greens and yellows, the complements. But those are just starts. Then I have to listen to the painting. It's not about me. That's the part I love the most is when the painting takes control. And sometimes it doesn't look like it's going to work. But for me, I make it work. And that's my personal challenge. I find a way to make it work. People like it, great. People don't, that's the way it is. But I paint for myself. And that's important because if I'm going to expect other people to dictate whether it's good or bad, unless it's what I call one of the big guys, it doesn't reach me. It doesn't touch me. So in going through the steps, the first thing I do, and I can show it on another board. Um, what I usually do is, and I have to give someone credit because everything I've learned has come from Richard McKinley, and everyone knows it who knows me. I learned from him, and he's such a good teacher that I have a strong foundation, which lets me play and practice and do things that I wasn't exposed to. But because I teach it, what I teach as having a strong foundation, I do a 3 to 5 shape outline. Small, much smaller than this. This is a large thumbnail. And my second thumbnail that I paint from, which is part of the black and white if you wanted to do that. It's a value sketch. So I use the 𝗘𝗃𝗍𝗍 markers, which are not my favorite. You can use a pencil. And I always, as I was taught, put a dot in the middle for where are the viewers looking. And then I mark off, which is not a grid, it's off because there was another painting underneath. And so that I can imagine that this is 1/3 up here, and when I put in my horizon lightly, it's 2/3, 1/3. And then I do a notan, which people, it's a 2 value sketch rather than more 3 to 4 values. And the notan just takes the light and the medium light that you had in the value sketch and make it all light. And then the medium dark and the dark go to all dark. And that's what you end up with. And you're looking for aesthetic design. You What you're trying to avoid is 50-50. This tells me it's 2/3, 1/3. I can work with that. If it's half and breaks up and there's a divide, that doesn't work because it's evenly spaced and you're looking for odd numbers, looking for 3 trees versus 2. You certainly don't want 2 trees, which I call the boob trees. And that tells you, yeah, because what happens is it divides it and it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And you have the capability of changing and making your value sketch different. It's just a starting point. So that's how I start. I take my reference, black and white. I sometimes will go to apps and use the Notinizer, um, Color Snap, which I don't believe I have here, but I do have it on the other. So what happens with when you use a tool like an app, it's again, for me, a starting point. Um, so if there are questions about any of this, just ask. This tells me that before I even start, there's my squint, my intention. And for someone who paints, don't have a great handwriting. Coming from Europe, where I only could do script, to here, where I had a print, I'm kind of in between. But at this beginning stage, I look for, where do I want the viewer's eye to go? Where do I want to hook in to my picture plane? I don't want you leaving, so I'm not going to just have some kind of a focal point that takes you out. So I
Right.
plan it ahead. And this leads to a discussion of armatures. And my most frequent usage of armature would be an S curve, and usually it's a letter. And you can see that there's a beginning and it goes, and I could make this my focal point, a secondary focal area, and maybe up here add a highlight. So what I'm trying to do is create a triangle that keeps you in this picture plane. And what I use in the beginning, and this is not nothing I do is an absolute. I frequently will use blue violet, new pastel, hard pastel to start. Um, I happen to have today a 305 new pastel, which is spruce blue, which is Terry Ford's favorite. But I alternate. But to be sure that I have some warms and cools, I put the warms in also. I have blue violet 244, orchid pink 306, a hyacinth violet, which is number 254, and an orange, which I switched and went to a 212. Again, anything, when people sign up for a workshop, they'll say, oh, I don't have 212. Do you have something like it? It'll work fine. But like myself, being the good student, I want to have whatever the instructor says you should have. So here are some things when we're talking about lights and darks, meaning as simple as I can make it for values. You don't want 50-50. You don't want the even light and even dark. 60-40 works. 70-30 works. 80-20 becomes tonalist, sort of, depending on what you choose for your color family, but it's dramatic when you get to 80-20. And then in my head, I make a tic-tac-toe for a sweet spot that'll be my main focal area. It doesn't have to be one, and frequently I don't have just one. It'll be the sky and the pretty pink clouds and a tree with some highlights. So it's not just one little dot. And so those are things I prepare way before I ever get to this. Although at this stage, it's already in my head. So I'm just getting a board.
This
Yeah.
is really great, Eve. The amount of work that you've put into the preparation process and explaining how you approach it is really good.
It's good because it cuts to the chase. And then I have happy students, not people crying and quitting,
Yeah.
you know? And as a matter of fact, while we were talking about values, look what a goody two shoes I am. Can you see me?
Oh, look at you. I love it.
I use it. I really use it. I had a piece of red
And I'm going to
cellophane.
get a screenshot of that.
I had a piece of red cellophane, and then I went, wow, look at my studio right now. My lights are really bright. The shades where they're turned are great values. Wow. It's amazing. I love this. And being a goody two shoes, of course, I have several. Um, yeah, well, part of the gig, as they say.
I love
Okay. So now, for what I'm going to do, I want to show you how I set this up. In today's example, now I have 35 different ways of adding texture. So we're doing one underpainting because it's it's important, and it really works great. So you don't need to have 35, but options. I love options. So what I did is I took an acrylic. I took a red light acrylic, which looks like this. Um, Monte Marte from Pop Shelf, which is like a dollar store. This happens to be vermilion. Another one is orange. Another one is light cad red light. And those are so that I have a warm underpainting. I was told, and it it really isn't the reason I do this. I do this because it looks great. If I do say so myself, when it's finished, usually, that warm paintings sell more than cool paintings. Well, that's a whole discussion. But that said, the warm takes away from a blank beige or white
it.
um, board. So I took the acrylic and I put some water with it. And I'm going to show you how I did it. Let me show you also, people put their boards different ways on. I have to have this on something because otherwise it sits right on the tray.
Yeah.
So I want to put this down so I don't lose it. Um, I take four. I can do it this way because this will be faster for us. Four. Good. A hair. Why not? It's not a happy accident. Okay. So I take a board and I put these behind it. And then once it's on my board, like so, I take it and I go across like this because I like to use that to test my colors. And I go all around, right? I go all around. I'm just making sure I can do this like this. It'll stay. Masking tape is not all created equal.
Yeah.
Sometimes it doesn't fit. Okay, so now I do all four sides. People go, and a lot of people just make another little one here and stick it right on there. But as I said, I like to have this, pardon?
Oh, nothing. Sorry. That was just my computer making noises.
Um, I like to have the beige so that I can see what some of my choices are. And each time I do this, I do the same thing. He said, put a dot, I put a dot. This came from someone else that I do this type of a eyeball
Hmm.
grid, which I don't use except to put a horizon in. So I first start like this, and then if, for example, if I was working with this spruce blue, you see, I can see how dark that is next to the hyacinth. And you need to remember when you're doing values, and I do layer for values, when you have two colors that you think are the same values, if you squint and you don't see a line, a demarcation between them, They're the correct values, really important for me in the sky. And yeah. And so the more meshed the values are, the more you can see that you don't need to touch it and blend it because they'll visually blend.
Hmm.
Okay, so what I'm doing, and I'm not going to do all of it because I already have the board dry for us, but to explain, I took Dixie cup, whatever this is, plastic cup, put in some of that vermilion, took a, whoa, this way, spongy brush, swish it around because I prepared this yesterday. And then I start at the top. It's really nice. And you don't have to use this color. It's just, it works. And if it works, it's easier. So I go from the top. It's what I learned in doing watercolors. Pick up the bead, go across. This isn't very dark. I could make it a lot darker, but we don't need to. But you can see now there's a line. I can still go over it and it'll make a beautiful background. So
Is
I
this
dip.
sorry, is this a sanded board?
Oh, UART 400. I like 500 as well. I like a lot of different substrates. This happens to be, yes, a UART sanded. And I love it mounted because I use liquids.
Hmm.
So, when I'm out in the field doing plein air and being 𝗘𝗃𝗍𝗶, and I take a piece of leftover paper or I mount it myself, it's all bubbles.
Yeah.
And so I just assume order, I like from Dakota, there's 6x8 boards that I use outside, but I don't waste it either. See how nice and the transition is? It's
It is.
smooth, it's gorgeous. I can't wait to do something with this baby. Okay, so that's the basic underpainting with the acrylic. Then what I did is in this case, and I have to stipulate, it's not the way I always do it, but sometimes I put the texture, which I'll explain in a second. Now this is sticking it to everything, which is good and bad. You got it. Oh, here. And there. Um, so the this part, how I did it, what I did, and I, of course, did it after the acrylic dry. I
Right.
took, um, I took textured clear acrylic and I added a drop of water, or sometimes I just wet the brush.
You said
Um,
clear acrylic. Is that acrylic gesso?
yes, it's the
Okay.
exact same thing as when we say gesso, but it comes textured.
Okay.
Same price. Here's the bottle. You can get it. And again, I don't go for, big bucks on these things because they're part of the process underneath. But it's just cleared textured gesso. And the
Perfect.
more water you add, the more it becomes liquefied. So liquefied. uh, what do I want to say? I want to keep it at like a waffle batter, something
Yeah.
like that. I don't want it to be drippy. See, it's not drippy. I can
Sure. Okay.
practically turn it. So I take a nickel brush. This one has been through who knows what. It's 1.5 inch, but I like it. Here's why. The end is already all marred. I don't have to take scissors and create that. It came like that and gets worse as you use it. So what I do is I dip it and I test it on the side. That's why I don't have a whole, whoa, this way. I don't have a whole lot in there so I can test how thick it is. And
Yeah.
it's pretty thick. And so, but it has some liquid in it. And then in my head, because I already know, I mean, I've done enough of these in a series that I know which way I want these, and I'm not going to say their shapes. I know they're grasses, but for us, they're shapes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So suppose I want to accentuate these, because once this dries, it'll stand up a little bit, and I can just scumble pastel when I get to the softer pastels, and it'll be highlighted, because that's what I see in the reference photo, even though
Right.
I'm not copying it. So I just take it, and I'm taking it on the side.
Oh, on the
And
side.
what?
Oh, so I've tried this technique before, but I always just like use the full brush, never actually like the way that you're doing it. I like that technique.
Yeah. And there are many techniques, and depending on what brush you use, and I mean, right at this point, I can do things like I can take a skinnier brush, and I do this too sometimes, and just I can make marks in here so it looks like what it's supposed to be. Or if I already have the color underneath, that'll come through. Or this is a fan brush that makes a whole different type of a stroke.
Yeah.
You know, it depends what you're looking for, what you're willing to play with. I like dirty brushes. This brush I picked up happens to be dirty, but not as dirty as I like it. I like it to be nice and dirty, because there's surprises. They're usually muted colors, which is nice in landscapes. That's too much to the middle, so I got to move it. Oh, look, now it's got making, and it goes on, and then I can have a conversation with it, which is really nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to put this aside. This is how I did this part, where you can see that it's a little dirty. I have to be careful and put this in water, or it'll.
Dry.
Exactly. And there we go. Okay, so that's why I had to do it this way, so that this would be dry and ready. Finally, we're going to commence. And I'm going to do a sky, and I'm going to show you how I do a strata sky, a gradient sky. What I usually do is put a darker blue, and I do blend my skies. It's the only time I blend, pretty much. And I use my palm to blend. And then, so I'm testing this. It's a little dark for me. And each time I do something, this is darker than this. So the same color affects, this color will look different, simultaneous contrast here, than it is on the top part where the underpainting, see, that's still pretty dark, but okay. And then I'm going to put in something which is more of what is natural. It's more of this blue green. And then usually what happens in the sky, you have, it's kind of a yellowish green, but I still test it because that's pretty yellow, but with the blue from that, it should be the right color. And it is. And then, on the top part, I'm not using texture in the sky. One, for time, and two, um, I like it smooth.
Oh, I love those colors. Oh, Eve, we
Okay.
lost your sound. Oh, we lost your sound for a second there.
Oh, my alarm went off on my watch.
Oh, so what were you saying about that color?
This is a peachy. You see how these colors, the
Yeah.
values work really nice, even though this is darker. Because when I blend it with my hand, you'll see it looks real. It looks more authentic using this. And the last part, as we said, there would be a dirty horizon, and the dirty horizon is usually a red violet. This happens to be a relatively medium value, but now interestingly, somehow there's a little bit of the texture from the brush up here to mark off the horizon. But I see right now already that by leaving that section alone, it's going to add, I'm not sure what, but I can see it's a good thing. Let's
Okay.
leave it at that. So I take my palm and I'm not going crazy till I bleed. I'm just not using a pipe foam type
Yeah.
thing. And all I'm doing is trying to get these demarcations more smoother. Now, I'll show you how I do. I have to get to the texture, but I want to, this is the perfect time to show something else. Um, Sometimes, which is a lot of times, I include a moon or an orb or a lunar type thing. Not needed to be interpreted necessarily. But let me just add one thing. When I went over this just now, I kind of covered that up. So I take a stiff brush and I reduce. Oh, nice. Lovely. Oh, lovely. And we leave it like that. So, um, if I take a Q-tip, I wasn't planning on doing this, but people asked me about this, and it's not a big secret. Some people put orange and yellow and some purple to make this type of orb thing. Now, let's say that I have my tic-tac-toe, and I want something right here, right? There's a focal area. I tend to go often to the top right anyway. I think I'm putting pastels on my face,
The
which is fine. It's
mark
all,
of a true pastelist.
yes. So I take, right, my tic-tac-toe and I go right here and I make a circle, but I don't leave it at that. I take my pinky and I go in there. See, and so that it's, I don't know how well you want me to move this so you can see how,
Yeah, I can see it a little bit.
yeah, and that's all you should see. It shouldn't be sticking in your face.
Yeah.
It's part of something. It's not the all encompassing full moon thing. It's just because when I'm outside, the moon is out in the morning. It's out
Right.
all the time, pretty much. It's just whether or not, the contrast, you can see it. Okay, it'll set, but in the morning, I see it if it's early enough. Okay,
Yeah.
so now we continue, and I'm going to put in, I have my, let's see, let's start with, this is, well, I believe that this is 244, blue violet. It's what's right in front of me. Or should I, yeah, is this what I wanted? Yeah, I could do that. Um, let's put in the darks. So I'm going to put in what I consider to be a tree line, but of course we're not calling it that. And then there's some darks in here, and it gets less here, and there's some kind of a line over here. And then there's kind of what appears to be an arrow, which could take you right out if you don't nip it. So you don't want to do that. And then there's dark over here. And as I go over this, you can hear it.
Yeah, you can.
That's the textured part that dried. And I like to raise this, I believe, so that it just shows this a little bit more and I have a better angle. Yeah, that's good. Okay. So here it's hard to see, which I like, but I know what's there. This is called fluff mud, and it's kind of a smelly organic thing. So I'm not going to dwell on that. I'm not trying to show how well I paint or I don't paint. This is to this, so it's below that. It's more of just sharing techniques, which is what people need. But you can see that this is gorgeous down here. I'd hate to lose that. And because I enter professional shows, I have to remember not to, well, I have to remember 80/20. So 80% soft pastels and 20% can be something else. Now, this is very close. Right away, my eye says, ooh, close to the middle. What are you going to do? Well, when I add more, I'm going to move this a little bit that way. Okay, so that's how far I got on that. I can add different colors, obviously. There's a lot of green in here, so I could add some of the hot pink, I call it. I'm putting, that's gonna be nice, maybe. That 305 is an amazing color. It works beautifully. And then we have this ochre in real life. So I'm gonna put some of this orange 212, I believe. Why? Because when I go back in, I know that this is going to have a lot of green, and green's best friend is purple, and the
Mhm.
magic ingredient is orange. So I get those in there. There's water in here, but I'm not going to worry about that for us. All I'm doing is showing you how I'm going to continue with this technique. I'm not putting anything here. I could, and after I may or may not add, knowing me, some kind of a dull purple, but we'll see. So
We've
take
got
a
about,
breath.
yeah,
I'm going to now liquefy this. What a disaster? No, not a disaster at all.
oh, I
Okay.
love it. We've got about 15 minutes.
Oh, so much time. I could do another demo. No. Okay. So, I have the wrong brush. I got to focus. I'm fooling around here. See, I have a good time by myself. I don't have to have a whole show. Okay, this is a number 6 synthetic brush, Princeton. Ah, if it's not in my hand and I find another one, it'll be another one. And what I have now is I took the gesso, not texture, just clear gesso and water. This is more of a batter consistency. If I push it,
Yeah.
it's gonna drip, right? So I want to get my water also next to me just in case I need more water, which I may or may not. But just so it's at least nearby. Sorry. I have no more room with this huge studio. Okay. So I dip my brush in the water and I dip it into this goop, right? And it looks like this. And then I kind of had it on a shop vac. Could have been anything, a rag, whatever. And I start at the top and I hold it in the palm of my hand, as I was told, like an artist. You are not going to hold it like a pencil because it's constricting with your wrist. So you want to have it out. It gives you mobility with your arm if your arms are working.
Yeah.
And you just start. So here we go. And sometimes I like to just close my eyes a little bit in this part because I like to picture what I know this really well. But today we're not closing our eyes. I'm dipping in water, patting, and going back in. I'm not going to do that because I want to make sure that we get this blocked in. So we'll see how that goes. But what I like about this is it's already kind of a grayish color, which is going to help with the depth. And I have a cool and a warm, and then I keep going. Now, I have to be careful with the colors, okay? So normally I have several of these containers so that I don't have, see,
So
it
it's
gets
not
stirred.
mixing.
Yeah, but you know, whatever shows up is fine. It's fine. Whatever it is, I will make it work. See, people start to, I don't want to use that expression freak out, but they freak out because it doesn't look like whatever they thought it's supposed to be. And you see these, you want to get some of this. Is it a drip like an alcohol drip? No, that's a different technique, which I use frequently as well. But right now, this is because of the bluish I picked up from there that was still on the brush. It's changing.
Hmm.
It's not that orangey that we saw. Now I'm going to clean my brush in the clean water and dip it and pray a little bit. I'm going to do the darker part because the darker part, and it's, yeah, see, it's nice. I don't want this to go to the middle. I can make it go further, but it didn't. So I'm going to try to at least respect the reference photo. And every three, this is what I tell myself, every 3 strokes or marks, step back. But in the moment, good luck. I'm just doing it. So I forget to step back. And your best friend, your very best friend is this, not your girlfriend or boyfriend. It's the mirror. Because if I look back in the mirror, anything that's, oh, it's not that bad. Anything that sticks out will be what needs to be fixed. So your best friend is the mirror. Okay. No questions?
We do have one that just came up, and it said, hold on, when
I'm
using,
going to keep doing this as the question. I can do
yeah,
both.
when using pastel on paper, do you listen to the pastel against the paper to determine how much pastel pressure is best with full arm movements?
Ooh, that's a very interesting question. I do listen. However, that doesn't necessarily dictate how I have a soft touch first because I know I can always add more. It gets, and I like very much to use reduction, meaning if I have too much, I showed you with the brush, I'll take the brush and use it that way. But I do listen. Now, sometimes I have a lot of texture. This is very light for me. Sometimes I have some of my work, if whoever looks at it, you can see that I have like thick 3D type stuff. And that you can hear more than if it's as light as this.
Right.
One thing I'd like to do is let some of this drip. Water and hard or soft pastels, but hard pastels I like very much. It doesn't have to be alcohol. I could make clouds with just adding water up here. Water and this kind of stuff, hard pastels, is just so versatile. Now, in that original one, it went over to here, so let's do that. And then if it drips too much, I like to turn it upside down so that it does whatever it does naturally. Now, this dries very quickly, but usually I will use some sort of a dryer if I'm in the studio by myself. If I'm outside, it let me just do it this way so that I get here, so that I get more, just like watercolorists do. They turn it upside down and see where it goes and what it does
Yeah.
and just kind of play. And as long as that when you put it to the side, if there's a shine, it is not dry.
Yeah.
Okay, it is not dry. Once this is dry, then I start again from the top and I decide what I'm going to add. Now, knowing that unless I used a dryer that would make some noise, I have a couple things here to show that this is the same composition. I'm just taking it out of the sleeve. So what I did is, I'd like to move this guy for a minute.
Ooh.
And there's another one, same composition.
Yeah.
The red underneath, I have the same thing. This was where that indentation went. It's not as pronounced. Here are some of the things. I hope I didn't enter this anyway, because I'll show, like this kind of a little mark. I love this. This is wonderful. Mark making, individual mark making that gives character. You see the triangle keeps you in?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Now, these trees are not gorgeous. For me, I would prefer, right away I can see all kinds of stuff. I would like to add a little bit of this because it needs a little bit of that. It needs a little bit over here. And, I work back and forth with it. Listen. I hope I didn't do anything wrong to this thing. Now, when I make those little marks, let me show you one other thing I use. For Rembrandt sells these little things on Amazon,
yeah.
and they already come with that. Now, 𝗨𝗱𝗱𝗏 is a purple that I like to use as an underpainting of the Rembrandt. But I also like, and so, what happens is Eve Miller can't be happy with just one set or
Of course not.
two.
Does
Eve
any
Miller hasn't got
pastelist
every one that they make.
Yeah, you got to have more than one.
I mean, and sometimes I have doubles because I forgot I ordered one. So, yeah. So let's suppose that on this, I needed to make a certain kind of a mark for emphasis. Rather than change the whole area, let's say I take something, it's a little bit bright on purpose to show and tell. I take it and I push really hard. You
Yeah.
see, yeah. And I don't have to leave it like that. If I didn't like it or wanted to play with it, which I love playing, I have a green on top of it and I see what happens if I put, and that's the question. Ooh, I'm just going to leave that. I like it. You don't want to go crazy with something you like because it throws everything else off balance. And that's my story.
I love it.
I'm glad.
No, this was a wonderful demo. Everyone in the comments is talking about how fantastic your teaching is. You were so prepared and so thorough in the way that you explain everything. It was wonderful.
Thank you so much. That makes my day, obviously.
Yeah, I'm so excited. I'm definitely going to have to try this painting. I just love it.
Well, you can come to my workshop.
Well, when I make it back to that side of the country, I will have to do that.
I don't always have one going. I have one in Hilton Head. That's not a big plane ride. You'd love it. It's over a weekend.
I love it.
Carrie, you can always ask me anything you need.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that, Eve. That's wonderful. And for everyone else on, be sure to check out her website. It's 𝗍𝗱𝗱𝗏𝗏.com. We'll put that in the chat. And then also follow her on Instagram. She posts all of these amazing pictures of her paintings on there. It's so inspirational. I love it. So thank you so much for joining us today, Eve.
Thank you for the invite. I appreciate it. Had a blast. Always do.
Yeah,
Play, have fun.
Yes, definitely. Thank you. And for everyone who's watching today, we have our free ebook, 45 Pastel Pointers from the Pros. You can check that out at pasteltoday.com/ebook. And don't forget to join us for Realism Live coming up November 13th through 15th. I'm going to be painting along in pastel. It's going to be a really good time. Lots of demos from great artists. We're going to be teaching you all kinds of different things. And we are here every day, noon, every day, Eastern time. Eric is usually here hosting. He's traveling right now. And I think we actually have a little message from him. Amandine, do we want to play that?
Where in the world am I? I am on the beach at 𝗍𝗱𝗏𝗏, where we're holding Fall Color Week this week. We have about 103 people from all over the United States. I don't think there's any international this year. And we've been painting the beach here at 𝗍𝗱𝗏𝗏 all day. We had time to get probably 3 or 4 paintings done for some of us. Sun's about to go down and it's been an absolute beautiful day. We wish you were here. Come next time.
I'd like to be jealous of him, but I'm actually having a lot of fun hosting this show with all of these awesome artists. So be sure to subscribe to our channel on YouTube at Art School Live, and you can follow Eric on Instagram at Eric Rhodes. And I look forward to seeing you guys all tomorrow. I have a special guest for you. She is a colleague member of Pastel Society of Colorado, and I actually got to paint along with her at a paint out last weekend. So I am super excited for you guys to get to see her. So I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye.